COVID-19 that reporters were referencing during that lengthy press briefing. Watch together.
It goes through air, Bob. That's always tougher than the touch. You know, the touch, you don't have to touch things, right? But the air, you just breathe the air. That's how it's passed. And so that's a very tricky one. That's a very delicate one. It's also more deadly than your strenuous flus. Well, I think, Bob, really, to be honest with you,
sure, I want you to.
I wanted to always play it down. I still like playing it down.
Yes, sir.
Because I don't want to create a panic.
He said he wanted to always play it down. What's problematic with that, though, is that we knew, at least at that point, the president has said he knew, that China was not playing fairly. So the American people didn't have a shot at getting the real truth. We weren't going to get it from the WHO. We weren't going to get it from China. And it looks like we got some sort of watered-down version of it from President Trump.
Well, that's one way of looking at it, and certainly, but again, if the president doesn't know everything to a certainty, then err on the side of caution. And maybe you could make the argument that he should have said masks and social distancing earlier as a result of that, particularly if he knew that it was aerosol-borne. But again, we expect perfection from people in places where perfection is not possible. And dealing with pandemics is a place where, in particular, the unknowns are large and difficult to deal with. What if the president had said at that point things that had sparked a panic? We'd now be looking back and saying he should have been more measured. So, look, is any president in dealing with a situation like this is going to look back and say, there are things I've done differently? But when it gets injected into a partisan environment like we are in the last 55 days of a presidential election, I think a lot of this is going to be partisan, screaming and shouting, and not really effective to helping move us forward as a country. Do people say things do you think Joe Biden was comfortable that his advisors like Susan Rice and Ron Klain and Ezekiel Emanuel were downplaying this all and dismissing it at a time when the administration was taking tough steps? Do you think he would...
Was Biden in that briefing in January? I don't think so.
In a moment of quiet would say, I wish they hadn't said those things, and I wish I hadn't listened to those things. I wish I'd asked differently. I suspect the same is true of President Trump as well. I think he would look back and say, I wish I had done this or that slightly different.
But they knew exactly how deadly it was going to be. They even knew in January because people in the House or Senate, Republicans and Democrats, were selling off their stocks. They knew.
But these are not easy situations to deal with, and to require perfection of anybody in this, whether it's Joe Biden or Donald Trump, I think is unfair.
Yeah, I do want to point out that Joe Biden, now we are learning, is expected to talk in reaction to the news about the Woodward recordings with the President of the United States. He's speaking momentarily, we're told, in Michigan. Of course, we'll carry some of his remarks as he makes those too. Karl Rove, real quickly before I let you go, you always have such a calm way of putting things and taking us forward. If you had been there, and I think this is fair to ask of you because you have messaging in mind at all times, how would you have had the president both do those things that he was seeking to do to keep us all calm? And I understand that. I'm a parent. I get it. But also saying the truth that people needed to know that this was airborne, aerosolized, as you put it, and in fact it was spreading by touching surfaces, so on and so forth. It was deadly dangerous.
Well, again, words matter, and this is why you have people draft remarks, why you have them parsed by the people inside the senior staff. It's why you have scientific experts look at them. But yes, this.
Wait, when did he call it a hoax again?
This is something that is difficult to do, and yes, you'd want to have a rigorous staffing process inside the government so that the president's initial remarks and follow-up remarks were carefully vetted and prepared to you don't want to incite panic in a moment like this. We saw those lines. We saw, people at the grocery stores.
The American people can handle it. We went through 9/11. We didn't panic. We handled it.
You want to make it worse, you want to make it better, and that means you need to have measured remarks. You need to say things that are accurate. You need to tell people when you don't know everything. You said, for example, one thing, that we got it by touch. Well, we now know that it didn't linger, that the virus did not linger on a lot of surfaces that we thought it would linger on. We had people who wouldn't pick up their mail, who wouldn't take in a package, and we found out that it didn't linger on those kind of surfaces very long.
True.
And that's just the way it is in dealing with this kind of a situation. We've been through this with MERS and SARS in the Bush years, and I got to tell you, the scariest briefings I ever attended were the ones about what could potentially happen in a pandemic, because the range of possibilities is so big, and the possibility of disaster is there in those results.
You're so right, what we learned about surfaces, but we knew touching each other was going to be a problem.
And touching our face and not washing our hands, yeah, exactly.
Oh, washing our hands. But you and I have known since we were 2. You said something that I wrote down, and I will quote you for the rest of the day. Perfection is not possible. And that applies to so many different things that we're dealing with right now. Karl Rove, glad to start the hour off with you. Thank you for being with me on Breaking News.
You bet.